Golden Spiral Media presents The Flash Rewatch.
I think you've been reading too many comic books.
Dedicated to the 1990 television series The Flash on CBS.
I think I'm starting to like this.
Join Corey and Tom each week as they chase down the fastest man alive and examine the short run of 22 episodes.
But you people have a reputation. Unorthodox experiments, secret government contracts.
Send us your feedback at goldenspiralmedia.com/feedback. Like our Facebook page at facebook.com/rewatch podcast. And follow us on Twitter at rewatchpod.
Anytime you need me, I'll be there in a flash.
And welcome back to the Rewatch podcast and the Flash 90 Rewatch. I'm Corey.
And I'm the villain. You can tell, because I have a growly voice, and I scowl, and I squint a lot, and I yell. Make no mistake, I'm the bad guy.
You know, I was hoping that you were going to go with Lord Chungo, but being the villain is also
I know,
also
it
very dangerous.
Stuck with me.
Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. We are here to discuss two more episodes of The Flash 90. And this week's episodes are Double Vision and Sins of the Father. But before we get into it, we want to remind our listeners that we are part of the Golden Spiral Media Podcast Network, where you can send us your feedback at goldenspiralmedia.com/feedback, where you can type out a message, or right there on the right-hand side is the SpeakPipe widget, so you can record your own voice, or you can call 304-837-2278. Also, head over to facebook.com/goldenspiralmedia and follow on Twitter at GSM Podcasts. It's always great to hear from you out there.
Definitely.
All right, Tom, let's get into episode 1 today. The episode is Double Vision, written by Jim Trombetta and directed by Gus Traconis. This originally aired on November 1st of 1990.
Barry, where the hell have you been? I've been calling you all night.
All night? Where have I been? We went out last night, right? Dinner and a play. Am I right?
And how did you like the play, Barry?
Play. Well, how'd you like it?
I wouldn't know. I spent the entire evening in the lobby waiting for you. Now, you wouldn't have stood me up without a very good reason. So what happened?
I went into the mailroom yesterday, and the guys were laughing about that Flash letter. I grabbed it. I didn't tell you about it because...
I'd insist on coming with you.
Right. So, I ran into Paloma, and there was a church. That's all I remember. But I feel fine now.
Barry, don't be so nonchalant. A memory blackout is a serious... Doesn't that give you indigestion?
Only way to get them before they get soggy. Now, you want some? I got boxes of them.
You know, sometimes you're a real jerk. As your doctor, I'm ordering you to take it easy.
All right. I mean, who wants to lose a doctor who makes house calls?
Someone is using religion and superstition to terrorize the people of Central City's Spanish Hill during the annual Day of the Dead festival. Unbeknownst to the police, these strange happenings are the work of drug lord Ruben Calderon, who is intent on kidnapping Paloma, the daughter of a man named Aguilar, whose testimony will put him in prison. Whilst investigating these events, Barry Allen begins to experience unsettling blackouts. Tina McGee discovers that an implant has been buried in Barry's brain, and as a result, the Flash has become the remote-controlled puppet of Marcus Trackman. Calderon's cybernetically enhanced henchmen. Using the flash from afar, Trackman further terrorizes the Spanish community, which ends up with a local shaman outing Paloma in an attempt to protect her. Barry secrets her away at Star Labs, but Trackman uses his control over Barry to return there and grab the girl while knocking out Tina. Trackman uses his device to control Paloma and draw out Aguilar, but the Flash stops her before she can shoot her own father. Trackman switches gears and sets his device back on the Flash, who grabs Aguilar and presents him to Calderon and Trackman. Luckily, Tina has finally overridden the device's broadcast signal, enabling the Flash to face off Trackman, eventually giving him some electroshock therapy while Aguilar takes down Calderon in a good old-fashioned fistfight.
Now, can you tell me what you saw?
I was in the Botanico Chango. The Santero was there, and Paloma, and someone else, but I can't quite picture who it was. Oh, Tina, I think I'm losing it.
I won't let that happen, Barry. I promise.
But I saw him. I saw the guy who's behind all this.
The knowledge is buried in the side of your brain you can't communicate with. You couldn't even reach it through hypnosis. Let me show you what the problem is. A tiny microwave receiver. It's rerouting the nerve impulses here and emitting neural signals of its own to program you.
Where'd it come from? Brain surgery when my back was turned?
Injection, most likely.
That's what happened. In the church, they lured me there with the graffiti, and then they stuck this thing in my brain. I led them to Paloma and hand-delivered her. Oh, I can't wait till you get this out of my head and I get a hold of that guy.
You can't take this chance, Barry.
Why not?
A similar device was tested on animals at Stanford University. The diode in your brain is like a generator. The more you use it, the more it builds up a charge. You have maybe 24 hours before it overloads.
And fries my brain?
But we can fight this thing. I'm onto the networks to find out how to turn it off. But for now, you must stay here with me so I can sedate you and slow down your metabolism.
Oh, no, you don't. I've got to find Paloma before they use her to get to her father.
But Barry, you...
Just keep working on it. Turn it off. Jam it. You'll think of something. I know you will.
All right, let's get into some flashpoints. What do we got this week?
All right. So first of all, I want to say that the synopses this week, of the episodes, they're a combination effort this week. I actually was looking on that site that I talked about, the fastestmanalive.blogspot.com.
Right.
You know, that has some information about the 90s Flash, and they did reviews of the 90s Flash. And like reading over their little synopsis, I was like, this one's really good. I'm like, this one is just pretty much like what I was going to say anyway. So I was like, let me just take that part and then I'll add my part after. Because they just start off the synopsis, which was like the first part, and then I did the finish of the episode. So they start you off and then they don't really finish the whole synopsis. It's more of like a setup. And then I took the second part and added my part in there as well. So I'm going to contact see if I can contact the owner of that page and see if he's okay with that. Because it's just, he said it all right there. And then I just had to finish and summarize the end of the episode. So
Yeah. We love fan wikis. They always really help with our research and stuff like that. So
exactly.
Yeah. We always love to credit our sources.
Exactly.
So that was the fastestmanalive.com.
.blogspot.com.
We'll of course put a link to that in our show notes.
Now, the other thing that I found out about this episode was I was trying to see, again, if any of these characters that they introduced were part of the comic universe. And again, they're not. They're just made up for the TV show. But I did find out that Trackman, I assumed it was just his last name, Trackman, you know?
Right.
But apparently, back in the day, there was a Sega game based on this TV show.
Okay.
And they used the Trickster as the villain, along with electronics wizard Trackman. So they changed his name to Trackman instead of Trackman, and he was one of the villains you had to face in this Sega game. And We'll put a link there in the notes to the page that I found with that, and it's definitely based on this show. It has the same Flash logo of the the font for the name and everything, and even like Tina's in there. If you look on YouTube, you can find some gameplay of it, and it's definitely based on this show here. But they have the soundtrack to the Flash video game on YouTube as well. So,
man, people think of everything, don't they?
I know. So that link is there. That's in the notes as well. And you can go ahead and listen to some old 8-bit chip tunes. And it doesn't sound like Danny Elfman. Like, they did not try to emulate Danny Elfman. They just it kind of feels phoned in a little bit. This 8-bit soundtrack, because you could have emulated Danny Elfman in 8-bit. It's been done. It could be done, but. Yeah, they did not do that for this one. I was hoping, because I was listening to the title theme in 8-bit, and I'm like listening, and I'm like, no, that's definitely not the Danny Elfman theme.
Oh, as soon as we're done recording, I am going to listen to this. It sounds amazing. I still have an old Sega Master System.
I was looking at the page there for it, and that one just says the Sega Master System. But then I looked, when I was on YouTube, I saw a video that said there was also a Game Boy version as well. So, yeah, I guess, if you have the Sega Master System, maybe start looking around for, it's just called The Flash. So
I'm going to try and hunt this down. I have the system there. I may as well use it for something cool and interesting.
If you find it, that would be awesome.
I'm pretty sure I could dig up a Game Boy somewhere as well.
Now, from what I understand, it's kind of almost like a Sonic type game where you're collecting Flash symbols as insignia.
Right, instead of coins or rings.
Yeah, it's a big part of it, but the trickster has put like traps all over the city, so anything you touch could eventually just kill you.
Right.
It's one of those games. So yeah, very frustrating from what I understand. So.
That's awesome. Cool.
There was someone I was unable to thank for all his help, and I'd like to salute him now. Wherever and whoever he may be, to the Flash.
Oh, to the Flash.
Salute.
What happened to Trackman?
Ah, he is in the hospital. They are not sure how much brain damage he suffered from the circuitry in his head.
Yes. It's a pity his genius was used for evil, not for the benefit of mankind.
Have you been watching the Late Night Fright Fest again?
Oh, shut up.
Perdón, senor. A small gift for the fan of the greatest wrestler, el muchacho más caro.
Thanks.
Gracias.
Don't ask. Let me see. It's in Spanish. I can't read it.
Huh, it's a love potion.
Love potion.
And what exactly do you intend to do with that?
Well, I don't know. But I think it would be an unforgivable insult to give it back.
All right, so let's get into the rundown. So you're saying in Flashpoints there's really no quick connections with the new cast of the new characters?
Yeah, not really. They're just all generic TV, characters. Nothing major. I mean, Garfield he's going to show up again and again because he's their boss, and that's who they report to. So he's going to show up and have his typical police chief comment. I mean, he's not a chief, but he's going to have his typical, police boss comments, like, you'll see as we go through.
Okay. Okay, so the episode begins with Day of the Dead, and this whole bit about somebody trying to contact the Flash through graffiti and letters to the police department and stuff. And it all turns out to be this elaborate ruse to put a chip in Barry's head. And this is pretty much the mob boss, Ruben Calderon, and his henchman called Trackman. So what do you think of this idea, somebody getting in Barry's head and puppeting him around?
I think, so far, I think in the show they've been doing a good job of using his powers, like in a good, like in a way that doesn't seem like contrived for the show, where, because he's got super speed. He's like really, like, he shouldn't be able to be beaten, really, because he's so fast, but like he has his back turned and he's focusing on something else. So someone just boom shoots him, and it gets the chip in his head. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think we were saying last week where they've really kind of set up that Barry is not invulnerable. Like,
Right.
he's still, I guess, sort of getting used to doing this whole superhero bit. So, yeah, it does. It kind of makes sense that, you know, he's gone in there full tilt, thinking he knows what's what, and he's put himself in a vulnerable situation, right, to get this chip in his head.
I mean, you remember during Lois and Clark when Superman got hypnotized? Remember?
Yeah.
And like we were thinking, like, why doesn't he just look away? Like, you know, like she's barely started to move the watch or whatever it was back and forth. Like, just look away, close your eyes, you know. And like this just feels more like real to me, you know. Like he was facing the wrong way. He didn't know that there was someone else there. He didn't recon to see if there's anyone else there. He went in, was focused on this thing, and boom, someone gets him, you know, gets a jump on him from behind. It makes sense. I like it. It's very real.
The one thing that kind of annoyed me about this whole thing, though, was that, yeah, they get this chip into his head, right? And it takes a while for him to realize, you know, that he's been losing time.
Right.
That sort of progresses over the episode. But the thing is that, like, boom, he gets hit with this thing, he's knocked out, and Calderon and Truckman are like, oh, you know, this is great. We've totally got, you know, the Flash now. He's on our side, so to speak. And then Barry wakes up at home and he's in bed, right? They never really do anything with the idea that Truckman and Calderon know who he is.
Right. Yeah, I was wondering if that was going to come into play, but no, it never does.
And of course, it's going to end with, you know, Truckman all sort of had his brain scrambled or whatever.
Exactly.
So that doesn't matter. Did Calderon die? Did he get shot or stabbed or something?
No, Calderon was just beat up at the very end by Aguilar and then you know, arrested. And I would assume that I was thinking that maybe Calderon didn't know who the Flash was, but that Trackman definitely did, since he was in his head and everything.
Well, it's a good point. And honestly, it kind of reminds me of the previous Mobster episode that we've already done. Mm-hmm. So it kind of just seems like a reworking of that in a way.
Right,
So that kind of makes me feel like it's just being a little bit lazy. Not to put down, I did enjoy this episode, but it just kind of seems like a recycle of a previous episode. Like I said last week, I kind of felt like they were stepping up in a progression, and this way, this sort of has, because he's got this chip in his head thing that he has to deal with, but still he's only going up against some sort of, you know, mid-level mob boss.
Right. It does follow the same idea of, like, Barry knows someone who comes into the episode, and then they're in trouble, and he has to help them, you know?
Yeah.
That you were talking about, yeah.
So speaking of which, what do you think of Spanish Hill, you know, and this whole plot with Paloma and Aguilar?
Well, Spanish Hill itself, I think, was really well done. I think they did a good job of, like, creating this, like, other district, you know, within Central City, because, you know, like when you have those big cities, you have these different districts that you can go to, you know, like, you know, Chinatown, stuff like that. So this having a little place called Spanish Hill, you know, I like that idea. And I think they, with the Day of the Dead going on, they were able to what's the word, like really flesh that area out. Like, it felt real. You know, it felt like a real place.
I agree. I think the setup of it was a little bit strange. Not that it didn't look good or anything. Like, you know, the whole setup with the Day of the Dead. It was the music, actually. Because it comes in and it kind of sounds a bit Spanish. But then it gets into like a fiddle or something. And it kind of sounds a bit more Celtic. And I'm like, this music just threw me a little bit. I'm like, this is supposed to be like Spanish, Mexican Day of the Dead kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah, now that you mention it, I remember that. Yeah, I could see that.
So that threw me.
Good point.
But you're right. Like at the beginning, like Barry shows up there to meet somebody who's left this letter. And he just happens to run into somebody he knows, Paloma, who is an integral part of this whole thing. So again, you know, it's following that formula. But I did like that opening scene, and I did recognize a young Clifton Collins Jr., if you know who that is.
I don't.
He was the guy playing Javier, the one that pulls the knife on Barry at the beginning, and he's just like, I know everybody on this podcast there, you know, kind of doing stereotypical
he felt,
Spanish.
Yeah, I was going to say, he felt so stereotypical. I was like, oh, that's not nice. That's not good. Like, even later when his accent and everything, I mean, I guess it's somewhat accurate, I guess. But I don't know. It just, to me, it felt a little jarring to hear that.
Yeah, but I love this guy. He was in one of my favorite book to movie adaptations. Bret Easton Ellis adaptation called The Rules of Attraction, where he plays a drug dealer. It's so good.
Oh, okay.
It's a terrific performance. He was also in that first Star Trek reboot. He played one of the Romulans. He was the offsider to Eric Banner in that movie.
All right, cool.
So I was kind of pleased to see him in this little drop-in bit part.
Now, as far as the whole plot and all that, I was actually surprised that at the end, like, they actually used Aguilar, her father. Like, he becomes a hero at the end. He beats down Calderon. He chases him down, beats him down. Instead of, like, normally they would probably let the Flash just, take care of Trackman and then do a quick sweep of the area and then capture Calderon. But instead, the father goes and takes down Calderon himself, which it fits because he was going to take him down in court, and now he takes him down, like, actually, outside of court as well. So I think that was good for his character, and we don't really know much about his character, but we see that he's a hero. He's doing the right thing. I thought that was neat because we probably wouldn't have gotten that in Lois and Clark. Superman would have tied up all the loose ends, but instead we get the side character, who we didn't even see, for quite a while in the episode.
You're right. They only pretty much talk about him and what he's going to do, and then it's not until after Paloma is kidnapped that we get introduced to this guy. And we don't even really get introduced to him. It's just like, hey, we've got Paloma. Come to the Day of the Dead festival, and then he's there.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Like, oh, okay. So this is Aguilar.
Yep.
But yeah, but I thought the stuff with Trackman, I mean, that was a bit over the top, right? With the circuits and everything on his head. But then he puts on the VR and the Nintendo Power Glove. Yes. And that's how he's way over, like, I've got the Flash's eyes, I've got the Flash's hands.
That was really over the top. Yes. I actually took some screenshots of that when he put on the glove because I wanted to compare it to because I was like, that looks like the Power Glove, and I'm like, I was comparing it with an ad for the Power Glove, and I'm like, yeah, that's got to be it, just like repainted, with some wires added into it. So yeah. There you go, behind the scenes of Flash 90.
Yeah. I never had a Nintendo Power Glove, but
no,
I saw the movie The Wizard, and that's got a
Yes.
tremendous scene with a Nintendo Power Glove in it.
I didn't know anybody that had a Nintendo Power Glove. I think it was just created, like that movie was like a big commercial for the Power Glove.
Right.
No one I knew bought into it. I think it was just too expensive.
I know. It also gave away the location of at least one secret whistle, so that's why I love that movie.
Well, there you go.
There's also, the whole thing about Barry losing time, so this is him blacking out, but pretty much he's being controlled by Trackman, right? And this happens a couple of times. And I have to say, I think for the second time already, and we're only up to episode, 5? For the second time, Tina McGee gets backhanded. Like, she got backhanded by that guy in episode 3, was it? Mm-hmm. The guy taking the hormone supplements.
Oh, that's right. Her old friend,
her. Yeah. And in this one, the Flash backhands her. I'm like, Jesus, like, Tina, you're always just like right in the way, aren't you?
I know.
Getting backhanded left, right, and center. I felt sorry.
Hopefully that's not gonna be a thing going forward. That it's just like something that we noticed that she's always getting knocked out. Yeah. I hope not.
And this whole thing with the Centero.
I don't know.
What do you make of this guy?
I don't know. The whole thing was weird with him. I mean, I'm not quite sure exactly what real purpose he served except to out Paloma. Like by giving her that protection. That thing that he gave her.
Right, that sacrifice chicken leg or whatever it was.
Yeah, that was like the only thing. Like otherwise, he was just there for, I don't know, like color, I guess, to make it seem more mysterious than it really was. I mean, to prey on the superstitions that the locals had, maybe. I just didn't, his character was weird. And when Barry walks into his shop and Barry recognizes the Mexican wrestlers on TV, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. It was like, he's like, oh yeah, Jay always took me to those fights. Really? Did he?
Honestly?
Did he really? Honestly? I know the muchacho guacho or whoever it was, you know?
I know, like he seems like so ingrained in the culture there on Spanish Hill. Because he's going to the restaurant where the owner is like celebrating his first year of being a citizen, and he knows the wrestler, and he has this weird relationship with Paloma, who's like hitting on him all the time.
Yeah, I know. That was awkward.
Yeah, and then this whole thing with the Centero, you know, and he's always going on about Lord Django. Oh, Lord Django. I don't even know what the dude sells. Like, what is his shop?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't know. Not sure.
Get your chicken legs, courtesy of Lord Django.
I will say that the dream that Barry had was kind of neat. There was an old Flash comic back, I forget if it's the 60s or 70s or whatever, but there was a picture of on the front where I can't remember the villain, but some villain was controlling Barry in the comic. And on the cover of the comic, Barry was like sort of like in pieces, like he was like a marionette. And he was being controlled by this puppet master. Maybe it was the puppet master. But he was being controlled by this guy with, you know, he had strings attached to him. So it was, it reminded me a little bit when Barry was doing that movement, that dance in the dream where it looked like he was being controlled. It reminded me of that comic.
Yeah, John Wesley Shipp was really selling that marionette movement in that scene.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. It was when he woke up from that dream, though, that kind of threw me. Barry's just like, no.
I know.
Yeah. And then, you know, of course, to get Tina in there as well to reverse the effects of the chip, because Paloma ends up getting one too and almost killing her father, right? So it's that thing of like Barry saying like, okay, so if you figured out how to shut it off, test it on me first. So you're like, all right, it's that true hero kind of moment, right?
Yeah, and again, you know, it didn't feel like a quick wrap up. Like it just felt natural.
Yeah. Do you think the love potion's going to come back into it at all?
I don't think so. I think that's just for the joke. You know, I think it's just for the joke at the end there.
Yeah. They do bring up his relationship with Tina McGee a couple of times though. Like Paloma mentions it, and he's like, no. So yeah, that's definitely getting set up, right? That's going somewhere. That has to be going somewhere.
Like we said, that's likely why they got rid of Iris. They want to have that romantic tension between the two leads, and you know, try to, you know, string people along. You know, will they or won't they?
But yeah, you know, as cliched as it was, I think they're still doing very, very solid with the episodes. You know, and I mentioned that it kind of felt like a rehash of that other mobster thing, but you know, it had that, you know, Spanish elements and some interesting characters and all that kind of stuff. And you're right, it doesn't just sort of abruptly wrap up. It has a nice progression of story and everything, and it plays out nicely. So, yeah, it's another good, solid episode, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Central City's hottest club is
Danny D's.
This place has everything. Perfect pool ball-shaped halls in the bar.
I'm gonna put you behind the 8 ball.
All the cash you would ever need to take from the register to pay for your illegal guns.
Yeah, shit, Johnny. Take as much as you want.
An jukebox that only plays 2 stock rock songs full of bullet holes.
Can't hear you, man.
Hear me now?
So come on down to Danny D's, where you'll have a smashing good time. All right, let's get into episode 2 today. The episode is Sins of the Father, written by Stephen Hatman and directed by Jonathan Sanger?
Sure.
One or the other. And this originally aired on November 8th of 1990.
So, what's your pleasure? Golf? Bowling? Stock car races?
Enough sports, Henry. How about a movie?
Okay. The Babe Ruth story, Channel 14. I'll get it. Wish this storm had knocked out the telephone. Hello. Well, say something, jerk. I can hear you on the line.
I'm here, old man.
Who is this?
You thought you put me away for good? I'm back.
Yeah, what do you want?
My due. You've got an outstanding debt. I'm back to collect it. You're gonna die, old man. Real soon.
After escaping from a prison chain gang, brutal bank robber Johnny Ray Hicks sets his sights on retrieving the long-lost hidden loot from his last great bank heist and plots revenge on the cop who put him away, Henry Allen. Barry must track down this elusive killer while simultaneously striving to protect his overly proud father, who may ultimately prove to be a danger to himself. Henry decides to hit the streets along with his former partner, kicking butt and taking names, while Barry prefers his usual investigative method. The Flash runs around town attempting to find information about Hicks, and the two Allens butt heads over their methods until eventually they have a heart-to-heart and reconcile their differences. They discover that Henry's old partner, just recently murdered by Hicks, had actually discovered where the missing money was stashed. Together, the Allens, with an assist by the Flash, chase down and eventually take down Hicks and his gang once and for all.
Hair samples match the car's registered owner. Nothing new here.
Yeah, same with the shells.
Yeah.
Standard 9mm, fits all Mac 10s and Tech 9s. That narrows it down.
Yeah, couldn't be more than a couple thousand of those in town, huh?
Dad!
Careful, that's hydrochloric acid.
I wasn't gonna drink it.
Seems to me you've drunk worse in your day.
Hey, Pete! Hey, Pete. You remember my son, Barry?
Oh, sure do. How are you, son?
Fine, Mr. Dinello. I'd like you to meet my colleague, Julio Mendez. Julio, Mr. Dinello.
Just Pete. Listen, I didn't mean to break anything up here. I just stopped by to see Henry.
Oh, welcome to my jail. Come on, we'll talk. Let the science boys go back to their toys.
I think I got something, Henry.
That's great, Peter. What?
A name from Hicks's file, Danny Duffy.
Duffy?
Hey, you remember the wheelman, the kid? We got him at the bank that day. Duffy went up for 18 months.
Where is he now?
I thought you might ask. He's got a bar, place over Carnes Avenue. Danny D's.
Barry, Pete and I are going to go downstairs and get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, okay. Don't leave the building, all right?
Yes, sir.
You know, it's really weird. Time piles up. Suddenly, you're the parent, they're the kids.
That's the way of the world, man.
All right, so what we got in the way of flashpoints?
All right, so once again, synopsis, half brought to you by the fastestmanalive.blogspot.com.
Nice.
And, and then for flashpoints, I was wrong. I didn't think we'd ever see the rest of Barry's family again for the entirety of the show, because I just didn't remember them coming back. But here we get, the father and the mother back, and that surprised me. So I was like, I got to look into this, because I don't know anything really about the Flash's father aside from what we've seen in the CW show. I know his mother has been in the comics, and she was very important to the whole Flash's Flashpoint storyline in the comics, which was a huge major thing. In the CW show, we had Flashpoint for just a little bit there. But in the comics, it was a major event, and his mother was a major part of that storyline. If you haven't read the original Flashpoint from the comics, it's so good. You gotta check it out. It's just, you gotta try to find a collection somewhere, because it encompasses so many different comics. It's just huge. It's epic. It's really good. But I wanted to find out about the father, because I'm like, who is the father? And apparently the father and the mother were in the comics for quite a while when the Flash came out. They just weren't like a big focus, so they would show up every once in a while, and, they were supportive of their son. It wasn't like in this show where the father is like against him being, a scientist cop. And the father actually in the comics was a doctor, just like in the CW show. So the CW show actually follows the original comics pretty good. Eventually, the father is killed, and the thing is, his body is taken over by one of the Flash's villains, and actually lives as his father for a while, even though he's a villain. And then something happens where that guy stops controlling the body, and his father's soul returns to his body. So his father comes back from the dead. There was a revamp of the whole DC universe in which, I guess, eventually Barry does die. And in the revamp, when he comes back, he has a whole different history, and his parents weren't a part of his life or something. It gets very convoluted when they do all these retcons. But basically, originally, the father was a doctor. He was a part of Barry's life through the comics, and yeah, I thought that'd be interesting because I just didn't know a lot about how the father played into the whole Flash's storyline. I wasn't sure. So there you go.
Interesting, yeah. And of course, the CW show does play it a bit different too because of let's just say events relating back to Reverse Flash.
Right. Oh yeah.
Really impacts Barry's relationship with his mother and father.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, John Wesley Shipp came back to play Henry Allen in the show, as well as Jay Garrick. So yeah, I have to say, I think it's really cool to see the father back. I'm glad that they brought the actors back and they're doing a focused episode on it.
Oh yeah.
Who's bankrolling him? It doesn't make sense that he could offer Gruber $10,000.
Maybe he knocked off another bank. He was always good at that.
The bank robbery. The missing money, that's it. It's gotta be. He's still going after the money all these years, and Pete figured it out. I wonder what this old city map was for. Hey, Dad, look at this highlighted part. The streets where you chased him. Now, see where Pete marked it? What is that?
That's 5th and McCullum. Boarded up houses, been there for years.
Not anymore. The whole block's under construction. The houses have been moved out for relocation. So Hicks is having trouble getting to his money, huh? We got him. For the first time in this whole lousy deal, we know where he is. Hey, Dad, come on. We got him.
Yeah, fine. Calling in, haven't picked up. Doesn't much matter to me anymore.
Well, don't you think we should be there? I mean, after all he's done?
After all I let him do. Shooting up our house, endangering your mother. Then I dragged Pete in. Look around, look at the damage. Barry, he came here to kill you, too. You're right. Who the hell do I think I am? Too old for any of this. What are you doing?
Going after him.
No, Barry.
You're right about Hicks. The grief he's brought us, I'm gonna bring him in.
I'm not letting you go out there alone.
Then come with me.
All right, so let's get into the rundown. So, quick connections? Anything here?
No, not really. I looked up Johnny Ray Hicks, and the only thing that comes up for is the Flash 90 show. So yeah, he's just made for the show.
Okay.
Surprisingly, such a great character like Johnny Ray Hicks wasn't used in the comics. It's odd. You would have expected it to be like, this great arch nemesis, but no, just for the show.
All right, so getting into it, yeah, the focus is on this guy Hicks, Johnny Ray Hicks. Yeah. So he is a guy who's been in prison for near 20 years, put away by Henry Allen, and we get this whole opening sequence where he escapes by murdering a guard whilst on a chain gang. So it was an interesting opening scene, the fact that we actually have a con who escapes custody by murdering a corrections officer. It was a little bit full on, in my opinion. It was a good setup. It caught my interest almost immediately, this whole escape. What do you reckon?
Yeah, no, it was good. At first I was like, he turned around and faced the guy, the guard that was, walking right behind him.
Yeah.
And I was like, and the guard just lets it go. And I'm like, I don't think they would let it go. Would they really let that go? He just threatened him with, an axe or whatever it was. And it's like, I don't think they would have done something about that.
Yeah, so. I know. They would smack him in the head with the butt of the gun or something, you know.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I went along with it. It was good. It was a good escape.
Although that other guard was a bit over the top, in my opinion, with his line deliveries like, "Get on the horn, tell him it's Hicks, he's out."
He's like, "For God's sakes, you know, come on, man."
And in the 5 minutes it took him to deliver those lines, like Hicks is like still there on the road, like.
Yeah,
you're standing there with your rifle, like you could have lined up a shot or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a little melodramatic for my taste, but it's still an interesting setup, you know.
Oh yeah,
and like I said, it's going to bring Henry Allen back into it because he is kind of the focus for this one, you know. And I kind of like that, you know, they set up in the first episode that Henry Allen doesn't really consider Barry to be a proper policeman. Like the science stuff, like he calls him a lab coat or, you know, whatever, like you're not out on the streets or whatever. So I'm glad that they're going to sort of bring that together and sort of resolve this kind of animosity they have between each other, especially because Jay's gone, you know.
Exactly.
So I think his father is now like a little bit more open to, he's reconciling with his son, you know. He knows that he's been hard on him.
Yeah. What now? How do you feel about Henry? Because like he comes off like he's kind of funny sometimes in the things he does. Like he breaks his neighbor's flower vase or whatever, you know, his old partner's flower vase, and he can be a little comical at times, but he's really like he's kind of a negative Nancy, you know, like he's not the most likable character. But I assume they were doing that so that like when they have their heart to heart later, you feel all that much the better about. Like he's made this big turnaround. Yeah,
you're right. Like a lot of the time you kind of get this like hard edge cop type character, but then other times it's like, oh, what do you want to watch on TV? We got golf, we got bowling, you know?
Yeah.
Let's watch a movie. Oh, the Babe Ruth story. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Yeah,
like, that's funny. That's kind of funny. But you're right. You know, the other times it's just like, you know, he goes to see his buddy Pete, and he's just like, hey, Pete, Hicks called me. I'm going to get him. And yeah, he's brandishing a pistol around. And you're like, oh, okay. So we're back to hard edge cop again.
Exactly. I thought the heart to heart was really good. I think he played it like the way he played it. Like I felt like he was actually being sincere. He was like, I never loved you less, you know, like, it's like, you should know that. Of course I loved you, you know. It was a nice touching moment between the two.
Yeah, the whole thing where Hicks comes by and shoots up the place, you know, does a drive-by. So Nora is forced out of town.
Right.
So he has to go and stay with Barry. And the whole dinner scene where he's cooking shrimp for his dad and Tina. I just thought it was funny, you know, the dad talking about, like, I've lived with your mother long enough to know what burnt is.
It was a good line. It was a good line, yes.
And then the whole thing with the glove, you know. And we haven't really talked about Earl, the dog, but yeah, Barry's got this dog called Earl.
Yes, he does.
He's a very smart dog. Like, he can open and close doors and comes out with, you know, part of the Flash costume at the worst possible timing.
Exactly. Yeah, Earl the dog. At least he's there for the whole series. At least he's not like Henry the dog from Sliders.
Right.
He just disappears. So Earl's great.
But yeah, you know, the interplay with the father and the teaming up, it was a lot of fun. You know, I really appreciated it. So, what do you think of the main plot here? You know, Hicks wanting to find his stolen money, his stolen $600,000, and he's having to deal with, you know, trying to kill Henry and Pete at the same time.
The whole thing about in the beginning where he's like, find my houses, and I'm like, what does that mean? You know? And when it's shown later that they took old, like, abandoned, decrepit houses and moved them outside of town, I was like, why would they take old, like, terrible houses and just move them outside of town? Wouldn't they just demolish them? You know, let's take these old, terrible, unused houses and put them in a big lot outside of town and keep them there for forever. Like, why would they do that? I was like, that's a bit of a plot hole.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out what was going on, right? Because they don't explicitly come out and say he was chased down and then hid the 600,000 somewhere.
Right.
They sort of just, they first set it up with like, hey, there's this mini mall being built. And you're just like, what? And then you're right, this whole thing about like there used to be houses there where they're building the mini mall and they've picked them all up and put them outside of town somewhere. So you're like, okay. The next thing, I could have sworn they were going to reveal that Pete found the money. Like immediately, like when Henry's over there talking to Pete about when they took down Hicks,
right.
Pete immediately brings up the $600,000 that was never recovered.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay, like, I'm not going to say that Pete's a bad guy, but he may have taken the $600,000 for himself.
Oh, yeah. That would have been an interesting turn of events there.
So that's what I like when it comes about that he just sort of hid it in, like, the side wall of some house that was moved outside of town or something. Like, I really thought it was going to be like Hicks was going to figure it out, that Pete has the money.
You know what would have been interesting, which would have been a great little turnaround, is if instead of Pete dying, like what if Pete did take the money, right? And what if Pete was actually working with Hicks? At the end they take down Hicks, and then all of a sudden Pete shows up around the corner and it's like, it's not over yet.
Yeah, you should have left this alone, Henry.
Yeah, exactly. And then Henry has to come to this whole thing to terms with his partner, is actually a bad cop. And just because, and it sort of plays into the idea of like, not all cops are just good. It's like Barry's a good cop, even though he's not like a normal everyday walk the beat cop, that would have been interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It would have, I don't know. It just seems like it's awfully convenient the way it wraps up, right? It's just like the money was hidden in the wall. Pete gets killed, of all things.
Right.
So, but he gets killed like right after he figures it out. Like 20 years. It's been 20 years. This money's been missing, and then Pete figures it out in like one afternoon. He's just like, 3 blocks. It must be here in one of those houses that they moved outside of town. I'm just like, yeah, it was all just very sudden.
Yeah, it's a little convenient. Even though it's very convenient they found out the answer like that. I still don't feel like anything was like super rushed. The Flash goes around town and roughs up some people trying to find answers. Henry goes around town trying to rough up people, and ends up meeting the Flash. We had this great storyline between Henry and Barry resolving their differences and their methods and whatnot. I don't know, like there's something about the pacing of these episodes that I really like. I don't know if it's the fact that on staff, we talked about it last episode. They had that Richard, was it Chaikin? Or Howard Chaikin. And like he's a comic book writer, and I guess he worked as their story editor. So maybe the fact they have him on there, he is just, since he knows comics, maybe he was just really good at setting a good pace for these episodes.
I totally agree. It's a great pace. I just think this one's just a little all over the place and a little convenient.
It is.
Yeah.
And again, they found the money in one of the houses, but they didn't go to multiple houses. Like he said he was looking for houses, and they were just at the one house and they found money. I don't know if they were intending to go to more houses or what, but I don't know. Yeah, you're right. It's a little convenient, a little quick.
Yeah, and speaking of the Flash and Henry going around town, roughing people up, the whole thing at Danny D's, right, at the bar. Right. Danny, what's his name? Daniel Duffy. So he's got this bar, Danny D's. And it just felt like, there was no due process there, right? These guys are supposed to be cops, right?
Right.
And Henry just goes in, damages property by shooting the jukebox, right?
Right.
This guy's really done nothing. All they know is that he knows Hicks. Danny D knows Hicks. Mm-hmm. So he goes in, destroys this guy's property. They naturally are upset by this. The Flash shows up and he roughs them all up a little bit. And then once they're all subdued, he goes behind the bar and smashes all the alcohol bottles. And I'm like, What? Like,
yeah,
dude, they were down. Like, they were no threat to
Exactly.
anybody else, yet you continued to destroy the bar.
That
Like,
was odd.
You were the ones who came in here and started this business. Like,
Exactly.
I was a bit like, oh, come on. Like, I know you're the hero here, Flash, and these guys probably aren't the cleanest of people in the world, but
right.
still, they haven't done anything. Like,
That's a good point. A very good point. Very good point. I did think that the smashing of the bottles was odd because they were down, you know, but when you put it all together like that, maybe the Flash is a bad guy.
Yeah, even the guy in the alley that he interrogates, like they're throwing dice in the alley, and he just picks that dude up, and he's just getting in his face, and I'm like, this dude, like, he hasn't done anything. You just walked in, you stepped on his hand, pushed him against the wall, and gave him some crap.
The Flash is a bully. What
I know.
the hell?
That's kind of what it felt like to me. It just felt like a bit of a bully.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I could see that.
So,
Good observation there. Good observation.
So as much as I like the episode and the storyline of it, it just felt, just a little all over the place with this one for my liking.
Yeah, I didn't. My main thing was I didn't like any of the villains. Like Danny D, I did not like Johnny Ray Hicks. Like, just so over. Like Johnny Ray Hicks, as I saw in the opener, just so over the top with that growly voice, And like he doesn't have that growly voice all the time because when he acts as the guy who's going to come in and fix the problem in the storage area or whatever, he talks in a normal voice. It's like, just use your normal voice. That growly voice was ridiculous. It made me laugh every time he talked. Find my houses. Find my house. I want my house. I need money. Give me money.
Batman. Johnny, like...
Exactly. And then, of course, Danny D with his typical, what are you going to do, Johnny? Anything you need, buddy, you got it. I'm here. You roughed him up good, didn't you, Johnny? You good. Yeah, it's like,
over in the corner there, he's got your shooters for you.
Exactly. So stereotypical. It annoyed me a little bit, the villains, the bad guys.
So it was a little, I'd probably say like 50-50 on this. Like, there's like 50% of stuff that was kind of irritating. And not good. But then 50% was still kind of interesting and good character and story progression.
Yep, definitely.
I can't figure it out. If this Flash is a good guy, why doesn't he want to show himself?
Well, I don't know. Maybe one day he will. Come on. We gotta knock off and go pick up Mom at the airport.
Yeah. Well, listen, there's something I've been wanting to say to you, son. That was a brave thing you did out there, taking on Hicks. That was brave and dangerous.
Yeah, but while I was doing it, I feel like I could have killed him.
Yeah, I know. Felt that way 1,000 times when I was on duty. Part of being a cop. Got to do your job and keep your feelings in. What I'm trying to say, Barry, is you are a cop, and a good one. You may be different than I was, or Jay. Ah, hell. No, this is easy for a dumb old Irishman.
Sounds great to me.
Join the Scarlet Cougar and X-Force 11 as they shine the bat signal on the Fox TV show Gotham. Karen and Jeff discuss the story and characters, break down the Batman universe, and share their knowledge of the mythos every week on Gotham Undercover.
We love to get our community involved as our undercover agents. Please find us by going to the following places.
You can search for Gotham Undercover on Facebook, tweet us at GothamGSM on Twitter, find us at goldenspiralmedia.com, and email us at gotham@goldenspiralmedia.com.
Don't forget, you can listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. And while you're there, we'd love to get you to rate and review the show.
And now we'll turn you back to your regularly scheduled GSM podcast. But we'll see you on Gotham Undercover. Same bad time, same bad podcast.
All right, so next episodes we have Child's Play and Shroud of Death.
You know, I was wrong about the family coming back, and with Child's Play, I wonder if we're not going to have his nephew come back into play here.
Yeah.
Sean, yeah. I wonder. I mean, I don't recall. I don't remember, what it could be, but maybe it is. I didn't remember the father was coming back.
I'm just hoping it's not like a group of kids. Like, we all know. I don't like that.
Yeah, if you're new to the podcast, Corey just adores child actors. Like, he just loves when they're in TV shows and movies. It's the best part of the movie for him. Of course. No, that's sarcasm there, in case you can't tell.
Yeah. Call me the reverse Flash on that one.
Exactly.
So I don't know. That could be rough if it's something to do with children.
Well, we'll find out. Well, what about Shroud of Death? I don't.
Well, they had the the Death Mask of Rasputin before.
That's true.
You don't think it's going to be like something like that, like some sort of artifact?
I don't think we're not at that point yet, where in TV stories where they're going to bring that back. Like we're a ways off from where they're going to bring back something like that. I think. I don't know. The Shroud of Death, I can't imagine. Maybe it's going to be one of those episodes where the either Barry or Tina are like on the verge of death. Like a Lois and Clark thing where she was on the edge, quite a few times, and brought back. So maybe it's something like that where they're going to have to face down, that type of situation.
Or like Tina's kidnapped or something and presumed dead or something.
Yeah.
So that kind of motivates Barry to be like, Tina's died and go on some revenge kick or just to find out she's not dead.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Exactly, because that is it for this episode of the Rewatch Podcast. Head over to goldenspiralmedia.com/Apple for more great podcasts from Golden Spiral Media. And join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast, or over on Twitter at Rewatch Pod. And don't forget, your rating and reviews are always appreciated on your podcast app of choice.
Awesome. All right, well, as always, thank you for joining me for these episodes, Tom.
Yep.
Very much looking forward to next week's 2 episodes, as always. So that will leave me to say until next time. I hate St. Louis, and I'm not too crazy about your sister either.
We gotta run.
Golden Spiral Media and the Rewatch Podcast are not associated with Pet Fly Productions, Warner Brothers Television, or Warner Brothers Television Distribution.
Come on, let's go down to Burger World so I can get some beef.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is solely for parody, news, analysis, critique, or educational purposes, as provided in United States Codes Title 17, aka Fair Use.
I don't believe you! You're still worried about your experiment, about your life's work?
Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
If all else fails, we can always go to Vegas.
Copyright 2017, Golden Spiral Media.
Hey, what's your hurry? You got someplace to go?